You now, Pam. Tell
Okay.
us what
Okay, good morning, everybody. I hope you're really well, and thank you for joining me this morning. So, my name is Pam. I'll just start off by giving you a little bit of background about myself. So, I'm a mother of three boys, three dual heritage boys. Walter is 6, Stanley is 3, and Hugo is 1. And I'm a children's picture book author, and I'm based in the Midlands. So me and autism, I did not know anything about autism before I had Walter, who is autistic. If someone was to ask me what autism meant, I would probably really struggle to give you some kind of definition, or I'll give you some of those common misconceptions that many people have. Walter was diagnosed in 2017 and he was completely nonverbal up until the age of 4, so he's 6 now. And we realised quite soon that he had a love affair with books and pictures and words. And he would literally go and grab a book, open the book up, and if there was a picture of, say, food or drink on that page, he would just continually tap at it for ages and ages. And this would become his way of telling us what he needed, because he couldn't verbalise anything. And when I say nothing, there was no mama, no dada, no hello. It was just noises and hand gestures and things like that. So we soon realised that books were going to play like a huge important factor in Walter's development. But as we started to buy more and more books, we realised that there were less and less books that catered for children like Walter, i.e. autism, from an ethnic minority background. And it sounds really crazy now, but if I hadn't have had Walter, I wouldn't have been probably bothered that there were no books for autistic children. But the fact that I have got 3 boys of mixed heritage and one has got an additional needs, it literally just completely opened my eyes to the fact that there is so much need for these books, and the representation in children's books is not where it is. We need to work so much harder to get there. So I started looking online for books where Walter can see himself in the pages of those books, and I came up with a few, but they were very informative, but they didn't kind of capture the imagination of, say, a youngster, a 4 to 6-year-old child. It was very educational purposes, and also it was very kind of stereotypical, and it didn't kind of excite me. So I thought, if it's not exciting me as an adult, it's really not going to excite a child who's autistic or who's not autistic. So I decided that I was going to write my own picture book series, which is called Just Like Me. And basically at the heart of Just Like Me is that we promote books and stories which kind of champion inclusiveness, diversity, acceptance, kindness, all the things that we need probably more than ever in the world right about now. So my first book is called Buster Finds His Beat, and it's really heavily based on Walter. The character is mixed race. The character is autistic. And I really wanted to kind of show the world that, you know, autism, although it's a complex condition, it can be a really amazing, magical condition as well. And it's one that autistic children should be able to relate to, and also non-autistic children and parents and carers and teachers should be able to open this book, read it, and get the same message that they do from any other kind of children's literature, which is all about fun, magic, kindness, acceptance, inclusion, all those kind of things. So it was really important for me when I was writing these books that I had autistic children in mind. And we're going to come back to Buster's story a little bit later when I'm going to read you the book. So when it comes to diversity and inclusiveness in children's literature, I mean, have a think back to when you were younger. What books did you grow up reading? Yeah, what were those kind of like really popular books that everybody read? Okay, have a little think and then send me a message. For me, it was like The Hungry Caterpillar. That was like a huge favourite one. Everyone knew about that book and things like that. And yes, it's a great book, and it's been around for what, 50 odd years, and it's still a very popular one in households now. But there is a place for the hungry caterpillar and dinosaurs and unicorns, which tend to be really popular characters in children's literature. But where are our stories? Where are our children? They need to be seen and they need to be heard. And it's so, so, so important. So I'm going to tell you a story about when I started writing these books. I went down the traditional publishing route and I sent my manuscript off to loads of publishers. Loads of them didn't respond back because I get thousands of manuscripts every week, which is fine. But I did get some really, really good, interesting feedback from some publishing houses. Now, the main feedback I got was that they loved the story, that they see that there's a need for this completely. But one publishing house, which I won't name, did respond back to me and said, we would love to publish this book, but we think it will market a little bit better if you change the character. And I was like, what do you mean change the character? Do you mean change his condition, his appearance? They're like, no. We think autism is something a subject that needs to be brought up, so we love that. But we think it will appeal more if you change basically the ethnicity of the character. So basically they wanted the child to be white, because when you look at the books now for children, majority of them are catered to male, white, middle class families. That's what it is. And I was so upset and I was so angry that this was like 2018 at the time, that 2018 we were still being told that, you know what, our stories are really, really good stories, but our representation is not. Basically, our stories should be heard, but told by those who are white. And I just thought, no, absolutely not. Of course, I would love a book deal. Who wouldn't? That is the goal at the end of the day. But morally, why should I sacrifice our stories, our heritage, our traditions, our cultures, so that it's going to impact and benefit those who already are at the top of the ladder? Does not make any sense to me at all. So I won't tell you exactly the words that I wrote back in that email, but you can probably gather that I was not very happy. And that was the end of that conversation, never to be heard about again. But it's a story that always sits with me, and it's a story that I always go back, and it's a story that I tell a lot of people. And a lot of people are very instantly like, oh my God, I can't believe that. But then when you go to a shop and you go to the shelf and you look at the stories, again, next time you go to the shop, have a look what books are at the top row of those shelves. Guarantee it will be dinosaurs, or it will be princesses, or it will be dragons, or whatever. But you will very, very rarely see a character, Black character, Asian, dual heritage, ethnic minority character. And if you do, probably 9 times out of 10, they will not be the protagonist, the main character of that story. So we have got so much ground to make. We've got so much improvement to make. And the only way I feel that we are really going to make it is if collectively we all come together. So what we're doing now, although there's not many of us, I'm not asked about that. It's our intent and what we want to get out of this, yeah? So when we buy the books, i.e. from small business owners like myself, yeah, you share those books with everyone else as well, yeah? It is so important because we know that children learn so easily, so quickly through literature, yeah? When they see themselves reflected in the pages of those books, they feel heard and they feel validated, yeah? And if every child could relate and see themselves on the page of that book, could you just imagine the spark and interest that will create for them when they grow older? Right, I'm just going to pause there. I'm just going to have a quick look at some of your messages because I don't want to just keep talking at you non-stop. I think it was just your message. I think, okay, I'll continue. So let's go back a little bit. I am originally from Tamworth, which is Staffordshire. So not many people have heard of Tamworth, rightly so, because it's tiny, tiny place. I will probably tell you that the nearest city is Birmingham. So from us who are from Tamworth, we always say we're from Birmingham. We're not, but that's the closest city that everyone can kind of relate to. So I grew up in the 80s, 90s, and Tamworth to this day is very much suburban, white, middle class family. So my parents and myself are from Ghana. So we were the only Black family in our town for about 10 years. Me and my sister were the only Black children in our school for about 10 years as well. So growing up, although my parents did an amazing job of trying to protect us from that discrimination and racism and all the rest of it, looking back now, I want to expose my children to as many cultures and traditions and people from different socio-economic backgrounds as possible, because that is what's going to really set the foundations from when they get older. Now, I grew up in a town where we were seen as outcasters. And this is going to sound so ridiculous, but I did not realise I was Black till I was about 9 years old. And that sounds so crazy to say out loud. But my reality was that I would go to school and see white children. I would go to after school club and see white children. I would go to swimming and dancing, I would see white children. I would open books, I would see white children. I would turn on the TV and the presenters would be white, yeah? And all the children in the crowd would be white. I would receive literature through the door from the doctor saying about, you know, check your teeth and don't forget to brush your teeth or whatever, and it will be a family, white family. So the reality was, although I knew that we were different, the subconscious part of my mind was just like, well, I'm white then, which sounds, again, so ridiculous. And the only day I actually realised that I wasn't white was the day that I came back home from school, and I was so happy because I'd drawn this beautiful picture of my family, and my teacher said to me, it's amazing, really, really good work, your mum and dad are going to be so proud. And I've always loved art from such a young age, and I thought, mum and dad are going to absolutely love this. And I ran home, showed my mum the picture, and to this day I can remember the look on her face. It was a mixture of sadness and just pure anger. And I thought, what is wrong with my mum? And she went, Pam, you coloured everybody pink in the picture, what's going on? And I was like, I've drawn our family. And she was like, this isn't us. And I was like, but it's our family, and why aren't you happy? My teacher said it was amazing and you don't like it. And she was like, we're not white, you're Black, you should be colouring us with brown crayon, not pink crayon. And it took such a long time. And I think I was more upset that she didn't like the picture, not for the fact that I hadn't realised that I was Black. And again, this is a memory that always sticks to me, and it's a really, really early memory. But that just goes to show just how much we are conditioned when we're not seen and represented. We just assume and we just want to slot in to be told to be like everybody else. And the fact that my teacher didn't even point that out is really, really upsetting as well. Yeah. So it's so important, the words we use, the pictures that we use, yeah, the stories that we tell are so influential. And even when we're reading a bedtime story to our child and it's about fluffy bunnies in the wilderness or whatever, and they make a den and they work together and all the rest, those stories have underlining messages, which is all about collaboration, teamwork, friendship, and all the rest of it. So although, yes, we're talking about fluffy bunnies or whatever it is, the messages are there, and that's the message that our children are taking, especially before we go to bed. And there's so much research which is coming out saying that bedtime stories are so helpful and influential with a child's development. So again, we can't just be giving stories out and saying it's okay that the character's white. Yes, it's okay that the character's white, but it should equally be okay that the character is Black or Asian or ethnic minority or from a different background. We need to be giving children the reality. That's really, really important. We need to be able to tell them that we live in a diverse culture, yeah, a diverse society where you are going to meet people from all different backgrounds, and that is absolutely okay. More than okay, it's bloody brilliant. That's what we should be saying. But we're not. What we are doing, we're telling young children that from a young age they can be anything they want to be. Yeah, we say it all the time. Believe in yourself. Work hard. You can be anyone you want to be. And then we change the narrative as they get a little bit older. And when we start to see people who are different from us, we question it. We become standoffish. We become defensive. And we say, well, why aren't you like that person? Why are you not dressed like that person? Why do you not speak like that person? Yeah. And we start to pick out all these differences and turn it into a negative story. And that has a knock-on effect on everything that we do, everything that we believe in. It has a knock-on effect about when we go for job interviews, yeah? Because the first thing we do is that we go to present ourselves and the person scans us very quickly. They look from head to toe. What do we look like? What do we sound like? What are we dressed like? Where do we come from? Yeah? All these quick snap judgments are made instantly. Because growing up, we've got this picture and this image of perfection. And that image of perfection doesn't really look like us at the moment. And that's what we need to change. We really, really, really need to change that. So although I'm a tiny, tiny, tiny business owner, I'm really, really trying to strive for big changes when it comes to understanding of autism, the acceptance, the awareness, and especially working in the Black and Asian community. Because again, I think our stories are not being told, and our stories are very different from maybe white middle class families, and our needs are different as well. And we really need to have more of a collaboration and a community, and we need to be having these conversations and saying to people, oh, someone's trying to come in, let me just admit them in. We need to be having these conversations regularly and asking each other, what do we need? Yeah, what are we struggling with? Are we struggling with the diagnosis, even trying to get a diagnosis? Are we struggling with trying to explain to our immediate families what autism is? Yeah, because I've worked with a lot of people who've said to me that English is not their native language. So when they're trying to explain to their family members what autism is, there is no word in their language. So the closest they get to is someone who has got mental health issues. So already there's a stigma attached to that within their immediate community. And one thing that I found is that it can be a very isolating experience when you have got a child who's autistic. And like I said, before I started, before I had Walter, I did not know anything about autism at all. So it's, I'm just going to mute the lady who's just come in, if that's okay. Welcome.
Hi.
Hello. Okay. I didn't know anything about autism at all. So when I was trying to explain it to friends and family, you get that like sympathy look, like, oh, that's a shame. Oh, and already you're like, okay, I don't know what it is, but already people are making me feel like it's the worst thing in the world. Your child being autistic is not the worst thing in the world by far. It's really, really not. But it's very isolating when you're not getting the support, and that can be from the, healthcare providers, family, friends, community. So we really need to come together. We really need to be asking ourselves the questions. We need to be really, really vocal and be really, really honest about what your needs are and how we're going to get them. Now, like I said, my children are all mixed race, so my husband's white. We had completely different experiences when it came to getting the diagnosis for Walter. When we did finally get that referral for the paediatrician, which took a really, really long time. And I don't know what your stories are like, and it'd be really interesting to hear afterwards. But for us, when I started to realise that something wasn't quite right, I went to my doctor, who kind of fobbed me off a little bit and used the whole excuse of, well, boys can be a little bit lazy with their speech, so don't worry about it. And because Walter was my first child, I thought, right, okay, well, I've got no means of comparison, so maybe the doctor's right. And you do instantly take what your doctor says as Bible, yeah, because they are the health professionals, and really, what do you know? So I waited a few more months, and I thought, no, still not quite right. And as a parent, as a mother, yeah. So I went back to the GP. Again, fobbed me off. He's only just turned 2, so give him a little bit more time. And it was only when Walter started nursery, and I picked him up one day, and I was waiting for him, and I saw all the other children around the same age as him, basically nearly having full-blown conversations with their parents or their key workers and friends. And that's when the penny dropped. And I thought, my child hasn't even said mum yet. So I went back to the GP and I demanded that we need to start taking some steps. And I did have to become one of those parents who's continuously asking and asking and asking. And it's not in my nature to be like that, but you do have to become one of those parents if you want the answers and you want the help. Otherwise, you'll be forgotten about. Yeah. So my advice, if anyone is going through a similar situation and you're not getting the answers, you have to keep going back. But on the flip side, I don't know if you've experienced this, but if you keep asking and asking, sometimes you can be perceived as being that angry Black woman, yeah, especially mothers. And my GP was white, of course. So I did come away feeling like, oh, he thinks I'm one of those really angry Black women and I'm really rude or whatever. But when it's your child and it's your child's health and it's your child's future, you are literally holding that in your hands. You have to do everything that you possibly can to get that support, because like I said, otherwise you will be forgotten about. So we finally got the paediatrician appointment and I went there, sat there, and it can be a really daunting, intimidating experience. Because you got these health professionals there and they're asking you questions. They're asking you questions about your parenting. You're asking you questions about your child's food. They're asking you questions about all the things that he's not doing, as opposed to some of the things that he maybe can do. And I came out of that I say interview because it did feel like an interview. I came out of that meeting feeling really judged, really disheartened, and not any closer to getting any kind of answers that I needed. Now, I completely get that autism is a really complex condition. And it's not like a normal condition where you go to your doctors, you tell them the symptoms, the doctor says, right, okay, come back next week, we have a blood test, boom, you get your answers. That's not what it is with the autistic diagnosis. It's really lengthy. It's really intrusive, and it can be you can feel quite vulnerable, especially if it's maybe your first child as well. And also you start to think like, oh, why didn't I pick up on all these things before? And it's so not your fault. Yeah, no one really tells you how to be a parent. No one tells you how to parent a child who may potentially be autistic as well. So it's really important that you kind of give yourself a bit of a break and don't try not to kind of usurp that mum guilt that we tend to do, or that parent guilt, father guilt that we tend to do so often. So when I came back from that meeting, I spoke to my husband, and my husband was just like, right, Pam, what are we doing? What did the paediatrician say? And I was like, I actually have no idea. All I know is that he asked me loads of questions, did loads of writing, hardly ever looked me in the eye, in all honesty. I don't quite understand where we're going from here. So we waited, and we got a letter back saying that we're going to come back in another 3 to 6 months' time. 3 to 6 months is a long time when your child is not speaking, yeah, and already you're starting to realize that because he can't verbalize how he's feeling, that is manifesting itself into other ways. So his behavioral issues started to decline massively. So we had headbanging, we had kicking, we had pinching, we had throwing himself on the floor, we had yelling like he was in the most immense pain ever. And let's not forget, he was only maybe 2.5 at this stage. So a lot of people were seeing it as, oh, terrible twos, the tantrums, when it was so much more severe than that. And the worst thing as well for me was having to go to pick him up from nursery and almost doing that walk of shame, because I knew they were going to tell me that Walter had kicked a child, bitten a child, or done something. And it was just awful. I mean, I hated, and I don't use that word often at all, but I will be completely honest with you and tell you that I hated picking Walter up from school, because I could sense the dread. I can anticipate that they were going to do the whole, he's hurt somebody, he's been shouting and screaming and all the rest of it. And you just feel so rotten. So when you're battling that and also waiting for some kind of diagnosis or help, but you're not really getting either, then you feel completely lost. You feel completely stuck. And then if you've got family members who don't quite understand it either, because let's be honest, I didn't quite understand it, you feel equally lost. And if you start Googling things, and Google can be your best friend, but it can be your worst enemy at the same time. But if you're Googling things like autism and you see a family and it's predominantly white, middle-class family, then again, you can't relate to that story. So I found that I was just getting challenges left, right, and centre. We got a referral letter saying that our appointment had come through for 6 months' time, and guess what? 2 weeks before, they cancelled it. And they cancelled it, and we had to wait another 3 months before we got the letter. And they cancelled that one. And their reasoning behind it was that Walter wasn't a priority, basically. So we went probably for about a year before we got another paediatrician appointment. So Walter's behaviour issues had, rapidly declined. He still wasn't speaking, and we still went any further than where we were 12 months ago. So the frustration was just immense. And then you do start to question your parenting skills. And let's be honest, we do. Yeah. If we can't get answers from anybody else, then we think that the blame falls on our shoulders. So as a parent, as a mother, I literally became really, really depressed from it. And this is a side that we don't talk about often at all. Yeah, I felt really depressed. I felt really, really isolated, because I did think that it was something that I had done either through pregnancy or after. And I don't know, again, we'll talk about this a little bit more. There may be differences between the mum and dad. And it just could be down to gender differences. It could be down to personality differences. I don't know. But me personally, I literally felt that it was something that I had done. So when we did get the next appointment, I said to my husband, I want you to go this time, okay? I can't really face it. And he was like, yeah, sure, I'll go. So he went, he came back, and this man, as in my husband, was literally almost skipping through the door. And I was just like, have you actually been to the appointment? He was like, yeah, it was brilliant. I went, what do you mean it was brilliant? He was like, I had such a good chat with the paediatrician. We were joking, we were laughing. He was saying, yeah, we're going to start the referral process. I was like, are we talking to the same doctor? And he was like, yeah. He was like, he spoke to me. We had a plan of action. He told me that he was going to refer him to speech and language, blah, 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 speak to the nursery, all these things in motion. And I thought, well, why did that not happen 12 months ago? I don't quite understand. And again, it's only now when me and Alex, my husband, have the conversation that he recognises the difference, because he is a white man. He's never had to worry about discrimination or things like that. Yeah. So for me as a black woman to say to him, okay, we didn't have the same experience. We should have had the same experience. I should have come out of that meeting skipping, dancing, praising the Lord, saying, yes, we're having some kind of, progress. But we didn't. And it's only a few years later, through similar situations, that Alex is like, oh, I totally get it. And it's really important that Alex is fighting the same cause that I am, although we are of different ethnicities, because that's really powerful. And I think it's really important that we have more conversations about mixed dual heritage families, because it is really, really difficult. And I think sometimes, especially if the person is ethnicity is Black or Asian and it's female, it's almost like you have to work even harder to be heard and to be seen. Because a lot of the time, I think and I feel that certain health practitioners, some of them are amazing, some of them are supportive, some of them are really going to fight your corner, some of them are old school, conventional, traditional, and they will see you as the woman, they will see you as the weaker sex, they will see you as being too overly emotional, yeah? And then if you do try and fight your corner, then you'll be seen as aggressive. So it's really, really, really difficult. So I'm so glad that I'm starting to talk to more dual heritage families and offer them some kind of support. And the support might not be anything revolutionary. It could just literally be like, I totally get where you're coming from. I've been in your position. I understand your story. This is how I dealt with it. Let me try and help you to come to the same kind of positive outcome. So that's really, really important. Am I talking okay? I'm just conscious that I don't want to keep just talking at you. Are there any questions?
Would you like Mark to put on the audio so people can talk?
I think I can do it, can I? Look, unmute. Okay, try that. Is that unmuted, everybody?
I think so.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
unmuted, everyone.
Okay, cool. Does anybody have any questions before I carry on?
I don't have a question. Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah,
I can hear you.
Okay, I was going to say I don't have a question, but what I'd say is I'm quite aligned with you, you know, with your experiences.
I think what I'll do, if I mute everybody apart from Elizabeth, and then it will stop the interference, okay? So let me do that first of all. That works. Okay, Elizabeth, do you want to just say that again?
Yeah, it's Liz. Sorry,
Sorry, Liz.
I was only aware of that today. I think something by you know, having to have my full name for purchasing things. But anyway, yeah, no, I was just going to say, yeah, I have had some experiences similar to yours. And going back to what you were just saying, I think quite often, because maybe if you have been raised in a white world or your mixed parentage, sometimes the realization of the racism can be a little bit invisible at first. And yeah, and I think the other thing is because we're British, we might diplomatically try and sort something out, and we're not getting anywhere. You know, I've got friends that, you know, and I think you're really graceful, but I've got friends that are from other communities, Black communities. I know a bit more like, rah, I'll be in your face about something. You know, there's me being all polite and trying to be constructive, and trying to have a more relationship approach. And that's not heard. You know, if you're often when you're just trying to be polite and constructive, trying to build a relationship, it's not heard, and it's not heard because it's racism. You know, and there's a lot of these unconscious bias and difficulties, whether it's a single parent or Black mother, mixed mother. There's such a lack of understanding, and then it's parent blaming, and so often I think people are traumatized, you know, and that can then be a barrier to them getting the help, because maybe if they've been traumatized from their child's experiences at school, it then gets in the way of them going further with professionals. Why would they want to have a chat with their doctor? Why would they want to try and push things? And again, if they haven't even got a school on board, and they don't have the knowledge about autism, what are they going to do? You know, and again, I think that often contributes to late diagnosis in our communities. You know, and again, like we get labelled angry Black women, our children, often the boys get blamed as bad boys, badly behaved boys, you know, and we start gaining all these, you know, labels.
So it's quite interesting that you said that. So from your perspective, what do you think that we can be doing individually and as a community to try and break down those stereotypes, those barriers, because they are there and they've been placed there for a very, very long time. So I think it will be almost naive to think that we can just change things overnight. I don't think we can at all. But we all have to collectively work together. We all have to collectively be singing from the same hymn sheet. We all have to be collectively supporting each other and helping each other. And I mean really supporting and help, because it's a word that gets thrown about so much. Yeah, I'll help you. Yeah, I'll support you. But are you actually really following through with those actions? Because it's not just supporting you when things are going great. It's more importantly supporting you when things are at their worst and when you are really struggling. That's when the true help and the support comes through. So Liz, what do you think that we can be doing to try and change that a little bit?
Well, I think this is a great start to begin with. It's a great start. We're connecting. And we've got to get a voice. We've got to get people at the table. You know, I'm trying very hard in my area to get a seat at the table. I'm not quite there, but I'm doing it anyway. You know, I'd say, and again, I'd say also trying to get education. Like us, we've all got to have our knowledge that we can share with others, and then we do need schools to maybe improve their understanding of autism and improve their understanding of racism or unconscious bias, because they can get very offended if you're trying to say something's racist, and then they're more offended that you've even brought it up. So they're not dealing with your issue or your child's issue or your child's experience. They're just offended that you even brought it up. So again, I think we need, you know, because some schools do have, you know, send strategies and some things in place, but they don't have anything much for racism. They'll say they don't tolerate it, but that doesn't deal with it.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
I think we've got to try and work on either schools policies or governors, you know, get involved, try and get a bigger voice in your own area.
Yeah, definitely. And I think the sad thing is that it, depending on where you live in the country, kind of depends and reflects on how good the services and support is. So I know that when we got the final diagnosis letter, I don't know why, but I thought something magical and mystical was going to happen when I got that letter. And in all honesty, I think the hard work, the hard graft started from the day that we got that letter, because we got the letter and we got the leaflet. The leaflet was of a middle-class white family, of course, yeah. And it was very much just like, we've been waiting for years for this diagnosis. And when I say this story, I feel really, not bad, but I've heard from people who still haven't got a diagnosis and their child has started high school. Do you know what I mean? So although it's all relative, for us it felt like a really, really long time. I know there's families who are still struggling to even get that first initial contact or anything. So you're given that letter that says basically your child's on the spectrum, you're given these leaflets, and then it's very much like, be on your way. And we were just like, well, where do we go from now? Because up until this point, we've kind of been just like searching, waiting for something magical to happen, and it didn't. So then you feel really disheartened, you feel even more confused and more angry, because in the day it's just a label then, isn't it? Your child's got a label, but what are you going to do with that label? How are you going to help that child? You just don't know. And honest to God, it is only from having to really put myself out there and actively seek and find other people who are going through the same kind of thing. And I think this is where we have the beauty of the internet and social media, and this is when it can be really, really powerful, because again, I have met Mark and Vanessa through social media. Yeah, I would not have known about you guys if I hadn't have spoken to other people who've then said, oh, you need to speak to Vanessa, and then Vanessa going, oh, you need to speak to Mark, I'm going to give you his email address. That's how this relationship has started to form. But I think there needs to be some kind of action plan for when you get that diagnosis, this is the next step, and break them into steps. Because if you try and give everyone too much information, you go into overload, you can't cope with that information. And I don't know if you've experienced this, but there's not one size fits all when it comes to autism as well. So you have to try different things and be like, okay, that worked, that didn't work. But you need to be given these like kind of like bite-sized chunks of information, ideally from people who you can relate to as well. So this is what I really want to be working on as well. And I know, Vanessa, you know Dr. Ken really, really well. And I've spoken to Dr. Ken, who is amazing leading autistic specialist. He works really, really hard for the BAME community as well. And we're trying to come to some kind of action plan or something that we can do to help families, because there are so many families out there who are just generally alone. They can't speak to anybody for fear of stigma, judgment, whatever, and they're literally just holding all of this emotional, it's like emotional diarrhea. Do you know what I mean? Like, they're just a constipation, they're just holding all of it in, and they don't know who they can reach out and speak to, and meantime their child is not getting the help and support that they need. Also, we need to highlight the differences between males and females. Again, when I thought of autism for boys. Yeah, that's all I'd ever seen. The little information that I'd ever seen about autism, it was always catered for boys. So I was never, until I started speaking to other families, and obviously Vanessa, I started to realise the differences between boys and girls. And there are huge differences between boys and girls. So we need to tackle that as well. So yeah, there's so much that we need to be doing, but I feel that sometimes we can't wait for health professionals to take on charge and steer that. We as a community have to start doing that, and I think it's more powerful when we do it together. than waiting for someone else to do it, for sure. Vanessa, I'm going to bring you in because I'm going to Vanessa's like, no. Vanessa, can you hear?
I'm on. Yeah.
So I know that you're working tirelessly behind the scenes as well, and you've got loads of experience with this, male and female, especially working with those in the Black community. I mean, your message, your power, the messages that you're giving out, the support that you're giving out is just great. But you are one woman trying to do a lot of work for a lot of people. So it's really important that we try and share the load a lot as well. Because you're doing this for so many people, which is amazing, but you still have to be mother, and you've got grandchildren as well. Do you know what I mean? It's really, really hard. And I know that other people in the same situation like myself, you can go through a whole day of looking after your child, and it gets 10 o'clock at night, and you have got nothing left at all. The situation that we're in now with lockdown, it has been horrendous for us.
Very horrendous.
It's been horrendous. And I've got 2 other children as well. So I've got 3 boys, and I've had to really change my parenting style. And that in itself is exhausting, because how I parent Walter is completely different how I parent the other 2. And what I let Walter get away with is different to what I let the other 2 get away with. And you're constantly battling this, am I doing it right? I sound a bit of a hypocrite because I'm just saying different things to different children, and it is absolutely exhausting. The lack of structure, the lack of routine for Walter has caused his anxiety to just be a next level. Walter always loved going outside. He loved going outside, going for walks, going to the park. Obviously we don't go to the park now, but we can't get him to leave the front door. Something has changed in the last 3 to 4 weeks, and Walter does not want to go for a walk at all. And we're now starting to think, when this is all over, we now have to we now have to put those steps in place to reintroduce the new normal for Walter, getting back to where he wants to be, where he's happy and he's thriving and all the rest of it. But it just goes to show, just like, we're all in this weird situation at the moment, and it's really kind of scary because we don't know when it's going to end. It's scary because it's the first time we've all ever been in this situation. And it makes it almost so much harder to parent as well, because you are fearful, you are anxious as well. So then you're thinking, if I'm feeling like this, how is my autistic child feeling? It's like next level completely. I thought that I would try and do the whole homeschooling thing. No.
Liz done homeschooling, but I know I couldn't cope with mine.
Do you know what, Liz? I take my hat off to you. We lasted half a day. I got the visual timetable out, everything, and it's just, now I'm just like, we can't do it. It's not working.
Can I just say, my homeschooling is not like homeschooling as in my my kids are sitting there doing lessons. It's my style and it's his style. So
okay,
let's
that's
say
different.
It's based on his interests.
Brilliant.
And maybe some of the things, it's an opportunity for us to connect and maybe work on some of his sensory things, because I think for some people now, if you're not aware of what your child's kind of needs are, you know, and if they are becoming more violent at home, you know, and maybe because they're not getting that exercise, they're not running it off, you know, this is your opportunity to try and work out what their things are, what helps them regulate. So I do it, but I do it my way. So, you know, and he's very creative. So yeah, I wouldn't say we're necessarily, even with both my children, you know, the other one doesn't have the same difficulties. We did get a flood of work that we're meant to do, but again, he's not handling it, and I'm just glad that we're safe, we're well, and it's about keeping, the priority is about me being in a good place and them being in a good place, you know, and them hopefully not killing each other. Do you know what I mean? Like, you know, I want peace in my home, and that's the priority. I want us to be mentally well, and then they're not in a place to do the learning, you know, when they're like that. So yeah, I do it, but I do it my way, and I also do it because I was forced that way, because my child was without a school. due to like a double discrimination issue, the lack of understanding that you're talking about. We were without school, so we were forced to homeschool for 14 months, and I've been on a long journey to try and get an EHCP. So it came about not out of choice.
Has he got a school now?
He got one just before lockdown. So we did all the preparation and got him, you know, so much anxiety about him going into that because he had such bad experiences in school. So much anxiety, worked so hard to get him ready to do that. Just started a transition. And so yeah, we'll be starting from scratch with that, you know. And again, once they're very happy with their being at home and their inner world, getting them to interact with the outside world again. So it's got to be step by step. So I do hope that, you know, the conversations start soon about, you know, whether they're going to allow gradual integration back into school for children like ours, maybe giving them an ending that they might have needed. Do you know what I mean? There's things like that that would be really important to them. It's going to be shocking for some of them if they're going into a whole new year or a whole new school or starting school without any transition. There are other things, but hey.
You know what, it's your story is like really common in the sense of like when I've spoken to families, they've said that there hasn't been a school available for their child, so the child has been at home for like massive amount of time, and you just think like, why is that still the case? Like I don't understand it. And again, this is something that we really, really need to work all together, because if you broke your leg, they wouldn't say you wait 14 months to have an operation to fix that leg. Do you know what I mean? So it's like, I almost feel like our children are not seen as a priority, or they're seen as a disturbance. So in order for the rest of the world to continue as normal, that disturbance it's just easy if they're just not seen. And it's not about that at all. I mean, I don't know, Liz, how old your son is, but when I've spoken to other families, teenage years bring on their own challenges when it comes to hormones, social skills, and all the rest of it. So that early intervention, that early diagnosis is just so key. And this is something that we really need to be focusing on, getting that intervention. And then when you get the intervention and the diagnosis, then it's immediately the support that you get afterwards. Because there's no point getting that diagnosis and then not getting the support afterwards. It's not conclusive, and it's not gonna help. So yeah, that's really interesting. So thank you for telling me your story, Liz. Does anybody want to share some of the Esther? Is that, yeah? Okay, I'm just gonna unmute you. Hang on a minute. Okay.
Yeah, hi everybody. Yeah. Hi everybody.
Hello.
Yeah. What I want to ask question first. My story is a long story, but I want to cut in this way. I have two children, one boy, one girl. My boy is 88. I have 7 years. My daughter. At the moment, I hear your story. But my story is still going. I have under conditional health issue, but it's not. Today I say I'm not gonna talk because I'm having heart pain. My chest is paining me too much. I don't know what's wrong at the moment with me. It's not like I don't want to continue fighting, but I'm feeling my health myself. I have to be strong to live with my kid. So I cannot continue with those systems, which is too much. You have a hope. I know all my son improvement. I didn't find any help from any professional. Maybe I can say thank you to Vanessa today. Maybe I will be martyred today on the hospital, or I will die already if she's not with me since 2017.